Susan came back from her business trip earlier than expected. She hadn't told anyone she was returning. She wanted to surprise Dennis, her husband. As she arrived on their street, she noticed several cars parked in front of their house. The garden was decorated with blue and pink balloons and a banner read, "Welcome our little miracle." Her heart pounded. She parked her car a street away and walked over. The door was slightly open, and music and laughter spilled from inside. When she stepped in, she froze in the middle of the living room. Felicia, her best friend, was visibly 6 months pregnant. Her mother-in-law, Rosa, was gently stroking Felicia's belly, while her own mother served drinks. Gifts were stacked on a decorated table. "So, is the nursery ready?" Aunt Vivian asked. "Almost," Felicia replied, smiling. "Dennis insisted on painting it himself. He's been working on it every weekend." At that moment, her husband walked in carrying more drinks. He approached Felicia and hugged her from behind, placing his hands on her belly. "We just need to set up the crib," Dennis said. "We picked it out together last week." Susan stood frozen, her body numb. Her mother stiffened when she saw her. She quickly walked over, whispering, "Susan, we weren't expecting you today." She grabbed her arm. "Let's go outside. We need to talk." Susan pulled away from her grasp. "Talk about what?" she asked coldly. "About how my husband got my best friend pregnant while I was working in another country?" The chatter in the room died down. Felicia was the first to notice her. Her face turned pale. Dennis stood frozen, his hands still on Felicia's belly. "Susan," he began. "Don't you dare," she cut him off. "How long have you been cheating on me?" No one answered. Her father, standing in a corner, couldn't even look her in the eye. "I can explain," Felicia said, taking a step forward. "We didn't want you to find out like this." "Oh, and how were you planning to tell me?" Susan asked, her voice laced with mockery. "After the baby was born, or when they turned 18. Her mother-in-law stepped in. "Susan, please think about the baby. Felicia doesn't need this stress in her condition." "Her condition?" Susan let out a humorless laugh. "The same condition I was in 2 years ago when I lost my baby? Where was your concern then, Rosa?" The silence that followed was deafening. Her mother tried again. "Honey, I know this is difficult." "Difficult for whom?" Susan snapped. "For me, who worked nonstop for 9 months while my husband was sleeping with my best friend. Or for all of you who had to keep up the charade." Dennis finally stepped away from Felicia. "Susan, can we talk privately? Don't make a scene." "A scene?" Susan scoffed. "No, Dennis. A scene would be telling everyone how you convinced me to take that overseas job. How you said we needed the money to start our family." She turned to Felicia. "Did he tell you that? Or did he say he was lonely and abandoned while his cruel wife chased her career?" Felicia started crying. "It wasn't like that," she whimpered. "We didn't plan this." "Of course not," Susan said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I suppose you just tripped and fell pregnant by my husband? These things happen, right?" The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some grabbed their bags, ready to leave. Her father finally spoke up. "Susan, calm down. You're upset." "Upset?" she repeated, her voice shaking. "No, Dad. I'm perfectly calm. In fact, I'm grateful." Her mother frowned, confused. "Grateful?" "Yes," Susan said, a bitter smile curling on her lips. "Because now I see everyone for who they really are. My husband, the liar. My best friend, the traitor. And my family, the cowards who chose to protect this lie instead of me." She walked over to the gift table and grabbed one at random. "This one's yours, Mom," she said, tossing it to her. "You bought a nice gift for your son-in-law's mistress's baby." "Susan, please," her mother pleaded. Susan tore the wrapping paper open. It was a white baby outfit with blue details. "How thoughtful," she said flatly. "I hope you kept the receipt." Dennis stepped forward, trying to take the gift from her hands. "Enough, Susan. You're making a fool of yourself." "Making a fool of myself?" She let out a cold laugh. "No, Dennis. You did that all on your own by getting my best friend pregnant while I was paying all the bills." Her mother-in-law stood up, outraged. "This is too much. Dennis was just looking for the happiness you couldn't give him. Always busy, always working." "You're right, Rosa," Susan said, her voice calm but deadly. "I was too busy working. Working to pay the mortgage on the house where your son was sleeping with my friend." She looked around the room. Every familiar face now looked like that of a stranger. "You know what?" Susan said, her voice steady. "You can keep the house, the furniture, the gifts. But Dennis, I suggest you get a good job, Because you won't have access to my money anymore. Dennis frowned. What are you talking about? I'm talking about how, while I was overseas, I wasn't just working. I was also consulting a lawyer. I have proof of every dollar I spent on this house, on you, on our marriage. She walked out of that house without looking back. Her hands were shaking. Her breathing was erratic, but she refused to break down in front of them. They didn't deserve to see her tears. As she walked away, she ignored the curious stares from the neighbors who had probably heard every word of the scene that had just unfolded. Susan got into her car and slammed the door shut. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her fingers turned white. Her vision was blurred, but she refused to cry. She started the engine and just drove. No destination, no direction, just getting away from that nightmare. Her phone was flooded with messages and missed calls from her mother. Texts from Dennis. Even Felicia. Please, Susan, we need to talk. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. You don't understand the whole situation. Oh, she understood. She understood perfectly. She understood that while she was working to support her home, her family, her marriage, they were together. She understood that every time Dennis called her saying he missed her, it was a blatant lie. She understood that every time Felicia said she was busy and couldn't talk, it was because she was busy with him. A bitter taste filled her mouth. Disgust. Disgust at herself for not seeing it sooner. After driving for a while, she pulled into the parking lot of a random hotel. She needed a place to breathe. She wasn't going back to that house. That house now stood as a monument to her humiliation. She walked to the front desk and booked a room for a few days. The receptionist gave her a strange look, probably because of her disheveled appearance, but handed her the key without asking questions. The moment she stepped inside the room, she locked the door and collapsed onto the bed. Only then did the weight of everything crush her. She curled up, hugging herself, and let the tears fall. Tears of rage, of disgust, of a deep, suffocating pain that squeezed her chest. But she couldn't stay like this forever. She had to do something. The next morning, she went straight to her lawyer's office. He already knew about her situation and had all the necessary documents ready to ensure she got out of this mess with as little damage as possible. I want to start the process today, she said firmly. Divorce, property division, everything. And I want it to be clear that Dennis won't see a single cent of my money. He nodded. You have more than enough evidence to contest any claim he might make. The house is in your name. All the expenses were covered by you. He has no rights to anything. She took a deep breath. Good. Then let him find out the hard way. She walked out of the office feeling an odd sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control of her own life. Her phone buzzed. Dennis. She ignored it. Minutes later, a message popped up. We need to talk. Please, Susan. She only responded with, talk to my lawyer. Days passed and the calls and messages didn't stop. Until one afternoon, while she was having coffee at a cafe near the hotel, someone approached her table. Dennis. He looked awful. Deep eye bags. Messy hair. But she felt no sympathy. Susan, please. He sat across from her without being invited. I didn't want you to find out like that. She crossed her arms. Oh, but how did you want me to find out? With an invitation to the baby shower. He ran a hand over his face, exhausted. This isn't how I wanted things to happen. I made a mistake. A mistake? Getting my best friend pregnant was a mistake. No, Dennis. It was a choice. You chose to sleep with her. You chose to lie to me. You chose to let everyone cover for you. He lowered his head. I was lonely, Susan. You were never here. You were always traveling, always busy with work. She let out a bitter laugh. And why was I busy, Dennis? Because I was the one paying for our damn house while you sat at home doing nothing. He said nothing. You want to know the most ironic part? She continued. I took that job because I thought we were building something together. I made sacrifices, thinking it was for a greater good. But while I was working myself to exhaustion, you were screwing my best friend. He looked at her, desperate. I know I messed up, Susan, but can't we fix this another way? She leaned forward, staring directly into his eyes. We are fixing it. My lawyer has already filed for divorce. You won't get a cent from me. And as for that child, I hope you're a good father, because I want you out of my life. Susan, please. It's over, Dennis. She stood up and walked away without looking back. It didn't take long for the news to spread. Her real friends, the ones who hadn't betrayed her, stood by her side. And her family? Oh, they tried to reach out. Her mother called her multiple times, trying to justify everything. We didn't want to hurt you, sweetheart. It was complicated for all of us. You need to forgive. Forgive? No. She moved on. Over time, she rebuilt her life. She left that hotel and bought herself a new apartment. She focused on her career, her future. And Dennis? Well, he soon realized that life wasn't so easy without the comfort she had provided. A few weeks later, she received another message. Can we talk? I miss you. She laughed, deleted the message without replying. And for the first time in a long time, she felt free. When she finally received confirmation that Dennis had been officially served with the divorce papers, she knew his real nightmare was just beginning. He tried to contact her in every way possible. He called her dozens of times a day, sent endless messages, even showed up at places he knew she frequented. But she didn't answer. She didn't give him a chance. She refused to let him manipulate her. And this time, she was the one who walked away for good. One night, as she was returning to her apartment, Susan found her mother waiting outside. Susan, we need to talk. She rolled her eyes. She already knew exactly what this was about. We have nothing to talk about. Dennis is desperate. You're taking everything from him, her mother said, outraged, as if Susan were the villain in this story. She crossed her arms. Oh, now he's the victim? Honey, he made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you should ruin his life. Susan let out a humorless laugh. He ruined my life, Mom. He cheated on me, got my best friend pregnant, and all of you covered for them. And now you have the nerve to tell me that I'm being cruel. Her mother sighed, reaching for her hand, but Susan pulled away. What you're doing to him, this isn't right, Susan. Anger burned in her chest. Oh, you want to talk about what's right? Was it right for me to pay for the mortgage alone while he was screwing my best friend? Was it right that I worked my ass off while he played the perfect husband? Now he gets to deal with the consequences. Her mother looked at her like she was a monster. He has nowhere to go. Susan shrugged. Not my problem. Her mother shook her head in disbelief. I didn't raise you to be this way, Susan. And I didn't expect my own mother to take the side of a cheating bastard. She turned around and walked into her building without looking back. Days passed, and Dennis's situation only got worse. Since she was the one who had paid for everything, he was now drowning in bills. The mortgage payments were overdue, and without her money to cover them, he quickly spiraled into financial ruin. Then came the eviction. She knew it was coming when she received confirmation that he had failed to make any payments. She made sure to personally be there to witness the moment he was forced out of her house. When she arrived, the place was in chaos. Boxes were scattered around the front yard. Dennis was arguing with the officer handling the eviction. Felicia stood beside him, clutching her pregnant belly with a panicked expression. Susan, he shouted when he saw her. You can't do this to me. She crossed her arms, feeling a dark sense of satisfaction bloom inside her. I can. And I did. This isn't fair. I lived in this house. No. I paid for this house. You were just a parasite living in it. His face turned red with frustration. Where the hell do you expect me to go? She shrugged. Not my problem. Felicia looked at her as if expecting mercy. Susan, please. She actually had the nerve to look Susan in the eyes and say please. Susan took a step toward her. Oh, so now you can say my name? Before, it was just I hope she never finds out. Wasn't it? Felicia lowered her head. It wasn't supposed to be like this. But it is. And now you and Dennis have to deal with it. Dennis ran his hands over his face, looking exhausted. You don't have a heart. Susan tilted her head. Funny, because you sure loved that heart when it was paying all your bills. He opened his mouth to argue but shut it again. The officer approached. Time's up. You need to vacate the property now. Dennis's expression turned to sheer panic. He looked around, realizing he was out of options. He grabbed a box and slammed it onto the ground. You just want to see me destroyed, don't you? She leaned in closer, meeting his gaze without a trace of pity. Yes. He clenched his jaw and stormed away, Felicia trailing after him. Susan stood there watching as he left, broke, homeless, and powerless. In the following days, her entire family turned against her. Her aunts called her. Her mother showed up at her apartment again. Even her father, who usually stayed out of things, tried to intervene. Susan, he's sleeping on your mother-in-law's couch. Don't you think this has gone too far? No, Dad, I don't. Felicia is pregnant. They have nothing. Great. Then Dennis can finally do what he should have done a long time ago. Get a job. Her mother threw her hands up, exasperated. You're obsessed with revenge. And you're obsessed with protecting a cheater. They couldn't change her mind. And Dennis? Oh, Dennis was in ruins. No home. No comfort. No access to the money he had leached off her for years. She heard through some mutual friends that he had started taking odd jobs to make ends meet. But it wasn't enough. And then the inevitable happened. Dennis showed up at her apartment. He looked miserable. Thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. Susan, please. I have nothing. She stared at him. I know. I need help. She tilted her head, pretending to think. Like I needed help when I found out you were cheating on me? He closed his eyes, frustrated. I was an idiot, I know that. But I can't change the past. She crossed her arms. No, but you sure as hell can suffer in the present. His hands clenched into fists as he swallowed his pride. You don't have to be this cruel. Oh, but I do. I learned from the best. And with that, she slammed the door in his face. For the first time in years, she felt at peace. Dennis was finally experiencing what life was like without her. And she was finally free. Time passed, and just as Susan had predicted, Dennis sank even deeper. No home, no money, no comfort. He had gone from a spoiled, dependent husband to a desperate man, hopping from job to job just to keep himself afloat. And Susan, she moved on. She didn't feel sorry for him. In fact, every time she heard about another disaster in his life, she felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. It was a sweet taste of justice, knowing that everything he had done to her was coming back to him. And then she heard the best news she had received in months. Felicia filed for divorce. Susan found out through an acquaintance, one of the few people who still dared to talk to her after everything that had happened. The woman ran into her at a cafe, hesitated for a moment, then smiled slightly before dropping the bombshell. She left him. Susan blinked. What? Felicia. She filed for divorce. And she wants alimony. The laugh escaped before Susan could stop it. A loud, genuine, from-the-gut laugh. Are you serious? She asked, still laughing. Dead serious. Dennis can't hold a stable job, and she doesn't want to be the one supporting him. Oh, the irony was delicious. Felicia, the woman who had sworn Dennis was her one true love, who clung to him like a parasite while Susan worked to pay for everything, had now done to him exactly what he did to her. Left him when he was no longer useful. And she wants alimony? Susan asked, still grinning. Yeah, she claims he promised to take care of her, and now that she has a baby, she needs financial support. Susan couldn't stop laughing. Please tell me, does Dennis even have money to pay her? Her acquaintance smirked. No, and Susan lost it. Dennis hadn't just lost everything she had given him. Now, even the woman he betrayed her for was financially screwing him over. Karma had come for him, and this time, he had no one left to leech off of. I have to see this. The following week, Susan made sure to accidentally show up at a place she knew Dennis still frequented. A rundown bar they used to go to, one of the only places he could still afford. He was sitting at the counter, looking like a ghost of his former self. Thinner, dark circles under his eyes, his beard unkempt, and of course a cheap beer in his hand. Susan walked in slowly, taking her time, and sat 2 seats away. He noticed her immediately, his face tightening. What do you want? He muttered, his voice rough and tired. Nothing, Susan said, picking up her own drink. Just enjoying the view. He sighed heavily. Are you happy now? Susan took a sip, savoring the moment. Yes, very. He scoffed, shaking his head. You think this is funny? Dennis, I think this is hilarious. You threw our marriage away for Felicia, and look at you now. She left you. She took whatever little you had left. He ran a hand over his face, clearly exhausted. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. Tell me, how did your great love fall apart so quickly? He went quiet for a long moment before staring at his empty glass. She said she couldn't be with someone who had nothing to offer. Funny, right? That's exactly what he said about Susan. Dennis shut his eyes, his jaw tightening. You don't get it, Susan, he muttered. Oh, but I do, she said, tilting her head. You were only good enough for her when you were convenient. Now that you can't provide the comfortable life she wanted, she threw you away like garbage. He didn't argue, because he couldn't. Susan stood up, ready to leave. You know what's the best part? She asked, looking down at him. You deserve every bit of this. And with that, Susan walked out, leaving Dennis to drown in his own misery. After that day, Susan cut off everyone connected to her past. She distanced herself from her family. The hypocritical aunts who kept telling her to forgive, her mother who insisted she had gone too far. She owed nothing to any of them. The only person Susan owed something to was herself. And so she started over. She rebuilt her life from scratch, bought herself a new apartment just for her, sold everything that reminded her of that pathetic chapter of her life. Some things she donated, others she burned. Dennis and Felicia were erased. Susan went out more, met new people, enjoyed life without carrying dead weight on her back. For the first time in years, her life was hers. And while Susan moved forward, Dennis kept falling apart. Months later, Susan heard that he had tried to appeal the divorce ruling, claiming that he deserved alimony instead. Of course, the judge laughed in his face and denied everything. She also found out that Felicia kept draining whatever tiny bit of money he had left. And Susan, she had never felt better. The world was finally how it should be. She was free, and Dennis was getting exactly what he deserved.